Do you sometimes find yourself acting on emotions without thinking, or feeling overwhelmed by, or like you're drowning in your emotions? Today I'm going to give you some tips on regulating your emotions, so stay tuned. Before I get into my emotional regulation tips, let's find out where you are in terms of emotional regulation. Here are some qualities of people with poor emotional regulation skills: difficulty managing stress, impulsive, mood swings, difficulties expressing emotions appropriately, feeling easily frustrated, having strained interpersonal relationships, self-destructive behavior like self-harm, substance use, reckless behavior, over or under eating, and physical symptoms like headaches, stomach aches, or irregular sleep patterns. Here are some qualities of people who have good emotional regulation skills: empathy, flexibility, able to bounce back quickly from difficulties, healthy boundaries with others, having an overall optimistic outlook, seeing the good in other people, and having open communication. Now, I think there's a spectrum. You're not like either 100% amazing at emotional regulation or 100% terrible at it, but maybe use that list to kind of gauge where you're at. Did you have more on one list than the other? Are there specific traits that you feel like resonate more with you than others? If you found yourself more on the poor emotional regulation side, do not worry. There's a lot of people who struggle with this. I certainly struggle with it a lot of the time, and I think no matter who you are, there's always room to improve in this area. So let's get into our emotional regulation tips. The first step to gaining more emotional regulation is to be able to name and understand your emotions. Now, this seems kind of obvious, but when we're experiencing emotions, especially if we don't learn how to cope with them, or we learn that they're bad, or we were invalidated in our emotions growing up, we can easily begin to feel confused or ashamed by our emotions. So naming and acknowledging them is a really important step to understanding them and regulating them. Just saying to yourself, I am sad right now. I am hurt right now. I am worried. You can begin to validate and understand those emotions for yourself. We also need to understand what emotions are. They don't just appear out of nowhere to make us uncomfortable. They do serve a purpose. When we're babies, we feel hungry and we don't really understand what that feeling is, so we just cry until the need is met, and then once we eat, we feel fine. So we learn, when I'm hungry, I need to eat. More uncomfortable emotions are signaling that there's some kind of unmet need for us. We have to learn to identify what that emotion is and what need needs to be addressed in order for us to regulate it. Sometimes we can recognize that emotion is coming from a past experience and maybe not something that's happening in the present. In that case, the need that needs to be met is to address and process these past experiences so that they don't continue to trigger you in the present moment. So now that you're an expert on naming and understanding your emotions, let's talk about how to regulate them. Something I like to use to talk about regulating emotions is called the window of tolerance. This is a way to describe the optimal zone of arousal for a person to function in everyday life. So when you're in this window here, you feel like you can manage the stressors of everyday life. This line will represent our arousal state, which kind of goes up and down throughout the day. So in the window, you might be stressed or overwhelmed, but you're able to function and move through life without this causing too much of an issue. This window is the ideal place to be. However, when we've experienced trauma or we're feeling really overwhelmed, our window can shrink, which makes it easier for us to move outside of the window. In this case, we can become either hyper-aroused or hypo-aroused. When you're hyper-aroused, this might look like being angry, anxious, out of control, yelling. You're in fight or flight mode. You feel like you're not in control of your feelings or actions. When we're hypo-aroused, this could look like shutting down, spacing out, feeling depressed, or feeling numb. So the idea is to find ways to continuously be expanding your window. Now, we all leave the window from time to time. That's a very human thing. It's normal. But if we are extra stressed, if we're overstimulated, if we've experienced trauma, all of these things can make our window smaller and can make us more reactive to stress and difficult situations. Also, if you are constantly distracting yourself and you feel like you always need to be listening to something or watching something or doing something, and it's really hard for you to sit in your internal experience, this could be a clue that you have a smaller window of tolerance. And I really hope that this doesn't make you feel bad about it or ashamed about it, because I am definitely in that place a lot of the time where I'm just constantly distracting myself, because it's really easy to do in the way that things are these days. Technology, all that fun stuff makes it hard to even have time to sit in our own internal experience. So maybe it is more important now than ever to learn these skills on how to expand your window, which brings us into our next point. How do we expand our window of tolerance? Something I like to incorporate is something called self-check-ins. So in order to widen our window, we need to be able to sit in our internal experiences. Some ways to do this include mindfulness, meditation, blah, 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 all those things that I'm sure you hear about if you've been in the self-help world. But this thing called self-check-ins, it's kind of an easy, quick way of incorporating these things. These are moments in the day when you tune into your mind, your body, and your inner experiences, and it can take as short as 30 seconds. So let's try it out right now. So you begin by closing your eyes or focusing on one point in the room, and then start to scan your body from your toes to your head. Notice if you're feeling any tension or pain or any tightness, and see if you can relax all the muscles in your body. A lot of the time we are tensing and we don't even realize it. Next, check in with your emotions. What is going on for you today? Are you feeling calm? Are you feeling rushed or anxious? So just notice and name this feeling. I am anxious. I am tense. I am worried. Notice it and let it pass through you. Notice if you're feeling a little more hyper-aroused or a little more hypo-aroused. And you can bring yourself to a more balanced state by either deep breathing to bring yourself down or mindful movement like stretching to bring yourself up. And that's pretty much it. Pretty quick, pretty easy. The hardest part is remembering to do it. And something that is helpful is something called habit linking. So every time I brush my teeth, every time I open my eyes in the morning, every time I get in the car, you can practice linking that to the check-in habit. Or you can just set a reminder on your phone like a normal person. And these check-ins can help us become observers of our experience instead of being sucked in by our experience or emotions. Being able to say, that's interesting, I'm noticing a little bit of anxiety here, I'm noticing a little bit of stress here, and not judging it, but letting it be there and letting it pass through you is a great way of expanding the window. The next part in expanding our window is to prime our mind and body as much as possible. If you're about to go scuba diving and you've never scuba dived before, and you just jump into the water and you throw on your equipment, you're wearing it wrong, you're gonna struggle. You're gonna be out of breath, you're gonna be drowning. So to prime our bodies and our minds to get ready to scuba dive, we need to learn how to wear the equipment, we need to learn what to do. So this is how I see self-care in a way, or the priming of our mind and body. And this can include things like scheduling intentional relaxation time and not feeling bad about it, getting a good amount of sleep, eating right, even things like getting 10 minutes of sunlight right after you wake up has been shown to improve mental health, moving around, getting some exercise during the day. And these don't have to be extreme huge things. You don't have to be a big bodybuilder, you don't have to be a nutritionist to do these things. They're just small choices you can make throughout the day. So the less that you are priming yourself in these ways, responding to these needs, the more reactive we're going to be when a stressor arises. You know how when you just don't get a lot of sleep, or you didn't eat all day, you get frustrated at little things? It's kind of like that. Our barrier is thinner, our window is smaller, and it's a lot harder to regulate ourselves. There's actually a podcast episode by the Huberman Lab that I linked in my description that goes over extensively all these things. It's really good. He talks about the research and all that stuff, so if you're interested, check it out in my description. I find that a lot of people want to skip this part, or they can feel invalidated if they're sharing how they're feeling and someone says just exercise or just get more sleep. It feels invalidating. It feels obvious. It does feel like a little bit of a cop-out answer. But people wouldn't be saying it so much if it wasn't true. And I think a lot of people's reaction is like that because, one, it feels invalidating. Two, it might feel like, I have to change my lifestyle, or that feels like a lot of work. Pausing for just a side note here, it can also be invalidating because sometimes people just need to be heard and supported and not given advice in that moment. So just ask or gauge the situation first before saying just exercise or just get more sleep. Thank you. I look terrifying. Now back to our originally scheduled programming. I don't think it has to mean you're giving up the joys of life. I have days where I'm literally on the couch all day eating junk food, and I feel great about it. It's just about balance and what works for you and your unique mind and body. So I encourage you to try just a few things a day that add to your priming of your emotional well-being. Just think of it as an experiment. Think about it as playing around. I'm just gonna try to step outside for 10 minutes in the morning and see what happens. I'm just gonna try to drink 2 glasses of water when I wake up, and then just notice if anything changes. And if it doesn't, that's information for you to go off of too. This last tip is something that I like to use, and it may not resonate with everyone, or it may not work for everyone, but it's a perspective I like to have. And it's all about not taking life seriously, finding a playful approach to life, thinking about how we're just spinning on a rock of nothingness, and it doesn't even matter if someone gets upset at me at the store. We're all just on this spinning rock in space. Some people, that can lead you to a little existential crisis. But for me, maybe for you, it's like, whatever. Things aren't that big of a deal, you know? And obviously there are things we need to take seriously. You know, like if we hurt someone or we're grieving, like we need to feel that emotion, we need to process that. But I think there are a lot of things that happen that we take seriously that really aren't that serious. And one way to recognize this is asking yourself, is this gonna matter to me tomorrow? Is this gonna matter to me in a week? Is this gonna matter to me in a year? A lot of the times the answer is no. Also recognizing that life and emotions and situations in our lives are fluid. We're gonna have days where we feel terrible, where everything's going wrong. We're gonna have days that are amazing. We're gonna have more days than not that are pretty neutral. So knowing that things pass, that things come and go, that can help us see things from a lighter, more playful perspective. Well, there you have it, my ultimate guide to self-regulation 101. I hope that this was helpful for you. If it was, please like, share, and subscribe. I post videos every Friday about music therapy, expressive arts, mental health, psychology, all that fun stuff. I hope to see you in a future video. Thanks for watching. Bye.